I'll tell you the story later about how this got created, but it has everything to do with creativity, productivity, and even decision making. So here we go. I'm going to share something quite cool, and you can read along with the lyrics too. So you might want to turn up your volume a little bit. Here we go.
Creative constraints can set me free. Coaching under duress isn't always easy, but I'm building my bridge of safety in mind. Step by step, I'm done feeling confined. Justin said it took 10,000 tries, 15 years on the nipple, then 5 to rise. His path was tough, but it lit a spark. I'll find my way, stepping out of the dark.
I don't know where I'm going, but I know how to get there. One step at a time, I'm shaking off every care. What next is my anchor, it keeps me moving on. The path unfolds as I walk from dusk until dawn. Overwhelmed by all these divergent plans, I want to converge, but my mind expands. Time box my moves, send that big email. It's okay to ask for help, I won't let FOPA prevail. Fuck believing, let's do it now. Action beats fear, I'll figure out how. It's never the what, it's really the how. Turn life into a sandbox, I'm free to plow. I can love exactly where I am. Oh, my story day by day. Breathing deep, let the tension go. Checking daily, find my flow. Cultivate that feeling I've known before. One conversation can open the door. I don't know where I'm going, but I know how to get there. One step at a time, I'm shaking off every care. What next is my anchor, it keeps me moving on. The path unfolds as I walk from dusk until dawn.
Yeah, the path unfolds by walking it. So I'm asking, what next?
All right, there you go.
Path unfolds by walking.
All right, so you'll get the story on that later. So we've got, I think, everybody here who might be here relatively on time. And it's so great to see a lot of familiar faces, a couple new faces. I'm Justin Perkins, and let's see if we can get Yanush also pinned. I'm gonna go ahead and pin you here and also pin myself. So Yanush and I will be walking you through some really cool conversations today around productivity. And a couple of you got to join us in Valencia and in our last workshop right before the holidays about creativity. So when we were brainstorming this series, Yanush and I did this actually in about 10 minutes. And the reason that happened so quickly is because over the last 3 years, we've developed a lot of collaboration and a lot of trust. And from that trust and really clear communication opens up this incredible channel of creativity that is extremely fun and is a rare thing to develop. So the way that this got created is exactly from the same philosophy that we're trying to share with you after, between us, probably 60 years of experience in multiple industries and surviving as humans, dads, fathers, husbands, etc. So really excited all of you are up for this conversation. I was blown away by the community that you've all created with Sigma. We're just really grateful to be here with all of you to hopefully make your lives full of a little less suffering and a little more winning. And so just to recap, actually what we're going to do first is go ahead and just do a little grounding exercise, and then I'll do a quick recap, and then we'll dive into the productivity conversation. All right. How many of you raise your hand if you've ever heard of non-sleep deep rest, or it's also known as yoga nidra? Okay. I want to introduce all of you to this because this is one of my favorite productivity hacks. And so, what we're going to do is just go ahead and close your eyes and let yourself settle in for a minute. And then you're going to take about 5 breaths deeply through your nose. So, you'll breathe in through your nose and then breathe out slowly through your mouth with pursed lips, as if your lips are wrapped around a straw. So take about 5 breaths at your own pace in that way. Now, while you're breathing, continue breathing like that. And what this does is it actually reduces stress and anxiety in your system. It tunes your autonomic nervous system. And now, I want you to imagine that your awareness, your ability to focus on your thoughts or the external world is like a spotlight. So you actually have the ability to control where that spotlight focuses. So go ahead and focus that spotlight on the bottom of your feet. And notice the sensations of the energy moving through the bottom of your feet. And notice what your feet are touching, how it feels, the sensation. Then go ahead and notice the toes on your left foot. And then notice the toes on your right foot. Now gently work your way up towards the knees, feeling the back of your left leg and the front of your left leg, your left knee. And then switch your focus to the back of your right leg and the front of your right leg and your right knee. And then keep working your way up your body, the back of your left leg, your left thigh, your left hip, and the back of your right leg, the right thigh, and the right hip. And now notice your gut, and how does your gut feel? Notice the energy in your gut. Is it tense or relaxed? Keep breathing. See if you can relax all the tension in your gut 20% more. And then notice your whole back. And notice your chest. And move your awareness to your heart. And see if you can actually feel your heart beating and maybe even hear it. And then relax your shoulders about 10% more. And focus on your left hand. Your whole left arm. right hand, your whole right arm. Couple deep breaths. Relax your jaw. Notice how your tongue feels in your mouth. Is it relaxed or tense? Go ahead and open your jaw. Open your mouth and yawn. Open your mouth as wide as you can. That releases stress. It's often how animals reset and release stress through yawning or shaking. Now relax your forehead, your scalp. Now notice how your eyes feel if they're focused or relaxed. Take 2 more deep breaths. And when you're ready, gently open your eyes and come back into the room. Beautiful. So the 5 or so minutes we did took that might be the all you need to know about productivity right there. um, so just to kind of tee things up here and tie it together. So why decision making? Why creativity? Why productivity? Why do those things go together? Well, we believe those are 3 of the most important concepts as a leader. And all of you are leaders and learning to be excellent leaders as you create these incredible ideas and put them into the world and enroll people to follow you. So that requires a great deal of diligence to master your own understanding of how your own system works. And so decision making is an emotional process. We actually make decisions based on our emotions. And our emotions are highly impacted by our programming, our thinking. So we're actually feeling the way that we're thinking moment to moment to moment. And so to understand decision making, you need to understand the internal process of relaxation. By being able to relax and release emotion, you're able to actually clear your mind to be able to tune in more clearly to your intuition. Now, the same thing is true of creativity. The more that you're relaxed and clear, the more that your system is not overrun with noise, with emotion that's not irrelevant to the actual present situation, the more clearly you'll find creative flow that is innate to who you are as a human being. We are a creative species. And when we relax, we create better. It's as simple as that. And today we're going to discuss how that ties together with productivity. So what's really interesting is that it's pretty hard to separate productivity with creativity and also decision making. So today we're going to dive into that and have an experiential workshop here. And welcome everybody. Thank you for coming. Let's go ahead, Yanush.
Thank you, Justin. I want to start by saying how inspiring this was just to watch you in the last 5-6 minutes meditate. I'm thinking about my own kids who are teenagers and having them kind of experience what you're experiencing is really palpable. I mean, you kind of the next generation of leaders, and I'm really very hopeful what this planet is going to be like if this level of consciousness is raised so much. So I want to say that first. The second thing I want to say is that we're going to share a number of things today, ideas, and you may not agree with all of them. Good. Don't. Keep the ideas that resonate for you and toss the ideas that don't resonate for you. Is that cool? Cool. So the next, we have a little less than about 70 minutes. We're going to have an experiment with you. There's not going to be any slides. I don't have any talking points. We're just going to have a conversation about productivity. It's going to be a very different webinar that you probably attended. I'm not going to send any slides out, so it would be up to you to what you're paying attention to. Okay? Okay. So we're also going to have an opportunity, one of you whoever wants to volunteer, will have an opportunity to coach with me one-on-one today. And we'll tell a few stories about productivity and how productivity feeds into the life of CEO and leaders. And the completion, we would like for you to kind of grasp like what you're taking away from it, and also one action you can take from this conversation today. Okay, so I want to tell you what I think about productivity. Okay, so the quality of your productivity, has direct proportion to the quality of how safe you feel inside. So the quality of your productivity is directly proportionate to how safe you feel inside. Now, I just want you to park that idea and just hold on to this idea. Okay, and before we go, I'd like to set up agreements. So for any good productive meeting or conversation, I found that set up agreements up front are very helpful. Then we can agree on how we're going to hold this meeting while we're being together. Is that cool? Can we do that? Okay. Now, first agreement is on listening. Now, the question is, what is listening? How do you listen? How do you listen well? So I want you to think in your mind, who is an amazing listener in your life? Who listens really well? And maybe you can jot that name down for yourself. And I want you to consider what qualities of listening that person has. So I'd like for you to listen as that person on this call. I mean, we're experimenting in life. This is an experiment. So I'd like for you to experiment as if you are that person who knows how to listen well. Can we agree on that? Okay, good. Now, I'd like for you to consider another agreement of active participation. Now, active participation does not mean you raise your hand and ask a lot of questions necessarily. Active participation means you're listening. Active participation means you take notes for yourself. Active participation means that this is the time you invested for yourself, right? And this is the time that you want to get something out of it. So as you actively participating in this conversation, you'll get something out of it. So can we agree on active participation? However you are actively participating. Okay, the next agreement is about being open and stay curious. Now, the fact that you guys are here, you're already curious. That's what I would imagine. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. Now, staying open and curious is staying open to ideas and staying curious to the ideas. Okay, can we agree on that? Okay, and the last agreement is we're going to have some fun and we're going to relax. Okay, just like Justin said, in terms of productivity, it's about being relaxed. So we're going to relax. Can we agree on that? Now, if you're not relaxed, or if you have a question, or if you don't feel having fun, you can raise your hand and ask, why am I not having fun? And we can help you with that. Okay? Okay. Now, I'm going to repeat what I said. So the quality of your productivity, if you want to 10x your productivity, has direct proportion to the quality of how safe you feel inside. So I have two questions for you, and the way we're going to do it is we're going to ask Francesca to break us up in groups of 3. And the two questions are, what does being productive mean to you? And when were you super productive in your life? So I'm going to put these in chat so you can actually see them. I'd like for you to consider these two questions. We're going to break for about 15 minutes. Everybody will have 5 minutes each to reflect on what is being productive means to you. And when were you super productive in your life? Because we want to boost our productivity. So let's talk about that. Can we agree on that?
So, um, okay, go ahead, Yanush.
Okay. So tell me about what you discovered in this conversation in the last 15 minutes about what you believe in productivity and when you were super productive. I'm really curious to know. You can either raise your hand, you can put it in the chat, however you like. Okay, Stefan.
Yes. We had a discussion in our room, like turned out we all have some similarities here, and it turned out that for all of us, when it comes to what productivity means, is about getting stuff done, getting tasks done in a certain amount of time, or like also was mentioned faster than average, however you define it. And the thing what was very like the same for all of us is that it's about also passion and tasks that give you energy. So that it's easier for us to get in a productive state and feel productive if we do things that we love to do, if we do things that we are passionate about, excited about. This is really something that stood out for me to me. And also the other thing what like yeah, resonated for all of us was the thing that you get more productive and get things more done more efficiently if you have less time left. So like this pressure thing. I think a lot of us can relate to that. That we have less time, and yeah, the pressure gets more and more. Then we also get certainly more productive state.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Cami?
We started a conversation there, but then I kind of added a point of, anecdotal experience, and that it's all around this concept that inefficiency, a certain amount of inefficiency is needed to be highly effective or quote unquote productive. And then also questioning what the output is. So I will lie if I would say that task completion does not feature in my sense of productivity, but like true sense of productivity is really connected to a much more sort of abstract feeling of being able to achieve the bigger goals of changing things in the world in the way that I envision them. And progress there is a lot harder to measure, and it's less about motion, like doing things like tasks, meetings, and so on. And it's in the moment, if I reflect on it, the best way I can actually know whether I'm being productive on that higher outcome level is actually through an intuitive feeling. When it happens, there are quantitative sort of ways to measure it, but then the progress has already been achieved and you're kind of looking backwards. So how do I know if I'm progressing at that moment in time? It tends to be a intuitive emotional response at that, when certain things are happening, which look very small, but actually for me illustrate huge progress in a much bigger sort of systemic picture. So one example of that just now was, if you would have seen me like an hour ago, there would have been like a little camera here. I was dancing like crazy just behind me and jumping up and down and so on because I received a singular email. Now the question is, why did that singular email elicit that? Well, because I had this like sense of like elation and huge productivity and progress on something much bigger, that email kind of triggered in me, and there was a lot of work that went into that. So yeah, I think we didn't get to a full conclusion, but that was one piece of our conversation.
Beautiful. So there's a sense of feeling of productivity, and Stefan said that sometimes when we have pressure on ourselves, right, we become more productive because we need to finish something. Correct, Stefan? We need to do something. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. That was one thing, and the other thing was like the passion and the excitement you have for certain tasks that get you also in a more productive state compared to you are not too passionate about, then it's easy to get distracted and be less productive.
Right.
But
Look
I
at
would
it.
challenge that because I feel like the time pressure is a fear motivation. If you're in flow, then you end up having a different kind of motivation. So I feel like most of my motivation in the past was this sort of time pressure, fear-based motivation. And it's still useful in certain instances. But I would say that I'm actually more productive when I'm not in that scenario ultimately.
Beautiful. Yeah. Anyone else?
Could I just add on to that?
Yeah.
I think what Kami said really resonates with me. And kind of those two schools of emotion when productivity is achieved. And I do think there's an overlap, and I don't know if other people, I'd like to hear this happens to other people. And I think it's partially due to the world we live in today and the lot of distraction we live with. But to me, I think focus and flow doesn't, like, the outcome, it matters less and less. And whatever that process was, if I was focused, like my neuron pathways feel clear and I feel productive. I get the feedback of productivity. Like, this sounds silly, but it can be as simple as fully focusing into a movie. Afterwards, for some reason, I get the same feedback as if I were being productive. And I don't know if that's something of our age or if that's how things have always been, but I'm curious to see if that's how other people feel. And another note on that is when outside of something like that, I feel like these flow moments, they must not be random, but they feel random. And I feel like I'm in an eternal search to find what it is when it happens. Because I just can't believe it's just random. So if you guys have tapped into your subconscious in a way that has told you this is what happened, this is why I reached the flow at this moment. Anyway.
Beautiful. Yeah. The question is, can I create that not of random? Can I create it as a habit, for example, that I can continuously be tapping into that? But when I hear about, productivity, a lot of times people say, I have so many things to do. I have so little time. You guys feel that sometimes? So much, so many emails, so many requests. I have these, requests for my co-founder, requests for my parents, requests for, emails, right? Requests for my boss, requests for like VCs, for my investors. Like everybody's wanting my time. Look, how do I do this? Well, plus, we're interested in being on social media once in a while, right? And sometimes it's once in a while ends up being 3 hours, like you're scrolling, right? And you're like, oh, I haven't been productive at all today. So the common theme here, what I'm hearing just for the three of you, is that if you want to increase your productivity, you have to look for the path of least resistance. Now, when you have resistance and pressure, Stefan, as you were talking about, right, that means that, as Cami said, it's fear-based, right? I'm fearful that if I don't complete it, that means there's certain consequences in my life that will not be necessarily positive. So I'm going to rush through this and complete it immediately, right? And sometimes it works, and sometimes it's needed, right? And I've done it many times before myself. So I'm not going to like raise my hand and say like I've never done it before. And this is one strategy. And then you can use that strategy a lot. And after a while, you can, we have a burnout. You guys know what that is? Now, burnout is just a breakdown of the system. The system cannot handle it anymore. So I need to reset. Sometimes we get sick. Sometimes we just can't even open our computers anymore. We need to take a break. We need to take a rest. And the question is like, how can we eliminate these breakdowns or minimize them and actually have a very steady workflow so I can actually be more healthy, productive? So one thing that I've learned is that the more we talk about productivity, the less productive we are. Yeah, the more we talk about productivity, the less productive we are. because we still have a lot of things to do on the back burner, right? So I like to share two quick stories. I'm going to share one story, and then Justin will share another story, and the story will lead in. Justin will share a story how it touches into the song that you've heard in the beginning. So the story that I'm going to share is that I was coaching a CEO, and the CEO had a head of sales, and he asked me to talk to this head of sales because this head of sales was not producing results that necessary for the company to move forward. He was not selling quick enough. Okay, so I get on call with him, and his name is Saba, and he allowed me to share the story, so I'm sharing the story with you. So I get on the call with him, and he says, I just can't sell anymore. In the last 8 weeks, I haven't sold anything, and I'm really worried about my job. Like, yeah, I understand. So I have a concern, but I'm trying the same thing again and again, and I just can't sell. Now, I have a couple of options there, right? One option, like just notice the content of the conversation and the process of the conversation, because two things are happening simultaneously. I have an option. I can talk to him strategically about how to sell better, or how to sell more. Is that right? Now, is that the conversation he wants to have with me? Perhaps. This is the conversation I want to have with him. No. I want to understand what's blocking him from actually executing on a sale, not how many things he needs to sell. It's kind of irrelevant in this case. So I asked him a question. I said, listen, how are you? How are you? And he says to me that, he's very stressed because of his family situation in his home country. And it's really difficult for him to focus on anything else besides that. Now, do I need to talk to him about his sales strategy in that moment? No. Okay. So he was on the 6th floor of his building, and I said to him, listen, do you want to experiment something with me right now? He said, yeah, sure. And he said, thank you for trusting me on this. So I asked him, I said, can you go downstairs and find a patch of grass? He's like, what? Like, can you go downstairs and find a patch of grass? So he said, yeah, sure, I'll call you back. So he takes the elevator downstairs from 6th floor all the way to the ground, comes out, calls me back on the video so I can see him. And I said, well, I want you to find a patch of grass so you can sit on it. So it was a sunny day in Washington, D.C. He finds a patch of grass, he sits on it. As he sits on it, I said, you know what? I want you to do this. I want you to lay down on the ground, and I want you to put your phone down right behind your head so you can actually hear me, but you don't have to look at me. He said, okay, great. So he's on the ground. The only thing I can see now is sky. Right? It's blue sky. It's sunny day. And I asked him a question. I said, listen, I want you to lay down, and I want you to feel what it feels like to be supported by the entire planet. I want you to sink into this patch of grass. And just feel how it feels to be supported. That everything is, whatever happened in the past, whatever happens now, whatever happens in the future, you are supported in this moment. Now, I want to tell you that in my process, this was a very intuitive way of me navigating this conversation with him. Now, I asked him to breathe, and he breathed. It was 8 minutes long. He gets up, and I said, do you have any questions? He said, no. How do you feel now? I feel amazing. Great. Do you need anything from me about your sales strategy? He says, no. Do you know how to sell? I do. Now, in the next 8 weeks, he sold twice as much. The question is why? And the answer is that because at that moment, he felt safe, comfortable in who he was. He didn't need me to tell him about how to sell things. He didn't need me to tell him how to approach his customers. All he needed is to reset. Now, the productivity got increased, not because I talked about productivity with him, but when I actually looked at what's behind his fear of productivity. Does this make sense? Is this useful? Good. Now I'm gonna pass it to Justin. I want him to share the story about 151 emails
Hmm.
in one day.
So, 24 hours ago, I was coaching a really wonderful man who works at a massive management consulting firm, a global consulting firm. And he brought to our coaching session a challenge, which is if he does not find a project within this global management consulting firm in the next week, then he's probably going to be fired. And so it's an interesting situation. And so similar to Janusz's story, there are a couple of different pathways here that could be explored. It could be explored of what have you done in the past that got you here? You could explore tactics for solving this problem. Well, it was clear to me that there's just a lot of fear going on and a lot of storytelling and a lot of desire to be somewhere else. So those were kind of the key things that were in the way of productivity in this scenario, from my perspective. But I didn't really know. There was a lot of just, exploring together. And what became clear was that, this man is extremely creative. And so his tendency is to go and think divergently. So what that includes is going towards the future a lot. It's daydreaming about, things he would rather be doing. Um, and yet he's got a kid, a young child, and he's okay if he gets fired for a few months, but it's not ideal. So in this particular case, and he asked me to help him do this, was rather than diverging on all of the possible ideas that he wanted to do, is to actually help to converge on how to solve this problem. And so as we got down to it, I tried my best to help him calm down and we got focused around what would make sense given that he's got a week left. That's actually quite a bit of time to to initiate conversations. And so what we got to was a couple of ideas. One is that he could go back and talk to people he had already worked with and had already had success in delivering projects. Um, and then what he came up with on his own was uh, an email that he sent out to 151 people. Now, what I did is played with some creative constraints. So I said, okay, would you be willing to do this by the end of the day? And he was, to be honest, he was scared shitless. But he agreed to do that. And so having a buddy with him who believed in him and knew that that was possible, because that was not in his fear, was really helpful. So he was able to do that and come up with the courage to take that action despite not being clear. He was not zenned out like Janusz's client, but he was able to find the strength to do it anyway. The other thing that happened was he also realized that he was trying to get out of the company. He didn't really want to. So we worked on that as well, which was adjusting the idea that he could fall in love with anything. And that the feeling he was experiencing of trying to get away was actually fear. And once he was able to see that, he was able to take action despite that fear and do what made sense for himself and his family, to buy himself time. That's what was common sense in this situation. Because he delivers wonderful product. There's no reason that he shouldn't be there except for the fact that he had gotten scared and lost his confidence. So we talked about the idea of confidence, which is basically an inside concept not determined by the outside world, and how that he could find his confidence if he just had a little bit more faith in himself. The word confidence means with faith. And so with those couple of ideas in mind, he sent the 151 emails. And then he created that rap that I shared with you guys at the beginning of this call. And those were lines that he gathered from our conversation and dropped into AI and created this beautiful song. Um, so he texted me back about 3 o'clock in the morning, my time, and he'd already received lots of wonderful support from colleagues, multiple leads for project ideas, etc. So I want to put a timeline to this, which was, he's probably been worried about being fired now for at least 3 or 4 weeks. The amount of action it took for him to actually start to solve this problem was probably 1 hour. 1 hour of focused convergence. Now, this is a little bit different from what Stefan was pointing to, which is that sometimes using time as a convergence strategy can be useful. So I did that as a constraint. I said, okay, you've got till the end of the day to do this. And that helped this particular guy converge his mind and focus. Instead of all of the possibilities, it was one action that made sense to him. And he came up with the action. I didn't prescribe that. So that's an example of how productivity can come together, but it's always about finding the root problem, addressing that, getting over it, relaxing, tapping into your intuition, and then creativity is the bridge from that intuitive idea to the world of form, to the action that's taken.
Perfect. Thank you, Justin. I wanna take 2 minutes to hear you. What did you hear from these two stories for yourself?
Safety and confidence. I found it super interesting to hear that someone has to feel safe and supported in order to try new things or to at least get back to what they want to do or to get back on track in a way. And the confidence part I found super interesting as well, because if you don't trust in your own ability to achieve something, that can be crippling, of course, for moving in any direction. So those two things really stood out to me.
Beautiful. Thank you, Arno.
What I could elaborate from that is that I think that the pressure and like not knowing whether it would be successful led him to lose like the sight of who he was, what he achieved until then, and how he could replicate the process. And so he went into a loop of like stress, circling in stress that leads to nothing without like tackling the problem and get some actions, like calming down, get some actions and tackling the problem.
Calming down and then tackling the problem. Julian, please.
I was remembered to like there are these overarching tasks that kind of you drag along through months and months, where it's not even like you don't even can't judge anymore if you should still do them, if they like get you to any better result or whatever, but they still produce so much stress or overlying stress. And the day-to-day life, you just take other tasks as a distraction from them to not do those overarching tasks, which mostly are like 5 minutes, 1 hour tasks that you could like write them down, you could do them the whole like in one day, you would release all of your stress. And I recently had a moment where I tackled two or three of those things, and like then realizing, so that's what I'm taking from the stories, to do that more often and more deliberately, because it's often just these 5 minutes things or 1 hour things that just release all the stress, and then suddenly you're so much productive afterwards, and it's not even the pain you imagined is not nearly as high as the pain you experience while doing that. So, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
procrastination is something that is very, very, very common, right? We use that word procrastination to like, oh, I'm gonna do it tomorrow. I'm gonna do it later. I'm just gonna do this one thing, and then next thing you know, you're doing it for 3, 4 hours. Versus, let me address something that's really difficult. Like, for example, in Justin's example, like this guy for 4 weeks, right? He's been sitting on it. And with one conversation, he was able to move. Now, what was interesting about the email that I would like to point out in his email that Justin shared with me as well, there was a very important sentence in that email. And that sentence was, I need help. Now, how often do we say that to our investors, to our colleagues, to our team members, that I need help? Because we are, everybody type A personality, everybody's driven, everybody wants to be first, everybody but collectively, right? This is why the Sigma is so beautiful, right? My understanding is that you guys collectively create something. So because he said, I need help, that's probably was the most important sentences in the entire email. And people say, when people hear that, they say, sure, well, let me help you. And all of a sudden, the flywheel starts to turn, right? And it starts to turn faster. Do you understand what I'm saying by flywheel? When it's very difficult in the first few revolutions, but then after a while, you can do it with your finger. And that's the 10x of productivity. But the very first time to ask for it is very difficult sometimes. Cami, and then we'll go into a coaching experience.
I was just gonna say, time is not a variable in the equation of productivity.
Okay, say more about that.
In some, of course, time is real for us, but if you change in both examples, or both stories, if you change your state of mind and the state of your body as well, which then influences the state of your mind, that can suddenly compress time. Basically, you can do things in much shorter periods of time than you imagined, because like the way I think about it, like time is a dependent variable, not an independent variable. So time is something that is a property that is associated with productivity, but it's not an influencing like factor of productivity. Like there's a lot, and I think that's something that's I've had to realize quite a lot. And I'm saying this now because it's actually something that my parents said to me a lot when I would say, oh, I don't have enough time to do X, Y, Z, or there would be so many things to do. And then my mom would just say to me, well, time is just a construct. You can accelerate things if you
And she is in it. Cami is in a different time zone, time space.
Cami is now a construct.
Oh, you're back? Cami, you're back? There you go. That's okay. You disappeared.
Okay. What part of it got
we heard about your parents. So if you don't mind me taking from here. So please understand that the concept of productivity, one of the tips that would give you is ask yourself, what's behind that? What's behind me wanting to be productive? Like when Julian said that finally he decided to, okay, I'm just gonna address this now. All of a sudden, you move through it. So the question becomes like, what's behind this concept of productivity? So I'm mindful of our time. We have 20 minutes, and I'd love to give an opportunity for someone to have an experience of being coached for 10 minutes with Justin and I on whatever you have in front of you that we can help you with. That has to do with maybe for you the concept of productivity. Anything that anyone has and would like to take this advantage of coaching with us.
I'm sure you have many more issues, but I can share mine and then you can share also yours. And the ones which is bigger, we do it. So
Great.
mine by now is tackling insomnia and stress because when I have things that I want to do or that I feel like it's overwhelming or really I don't know how to tackle them, I tend to get into the anxious mood and not sleeping. And also I wake up during night and start wondering, thinking about it. And so it's that one. But
Beautiful.
as I
Thank you,
said,
Bianca.
Yeah, and that's great. Let's go ahead with Bianca. But Stefan, you also raised your hand. What I'd like to suggest is go ahead and ask your question, and let's see if your question also gets handled while we're coaching Bianca. That's a possibility. So go ahead and share your question, Stefan, that you wanted some help with.
Thank you, but totally happy if we go with Bianca's. It seems more urgent. My topic would be like in the terms of productivity. I often have the feeling that exactly what we described, so much things to do, and sometimes catch myself thinking, "Oh, what if I just had more time?" And this was really also like, as Kami said, probably time isn't the variable here we need to look at, but I often catch myself wishing I had more time, the day was longer, so I could get done with all these things. At the same time, I don't feel too stressed about it because I also take my time to meditate and everything. But still, how do I handle this? But I'm happy if we go with Bianca's. It seems more urgent.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, great.
Yeah, perfect. We can go with Bianca. It's perfect.
If you have other problems, just go with that. I can.
No, we'll give you an opportunity. How's that? Would you like that?
Yeah, sure. But
Okay,
I don't
great.
want time for any.
That's okay. We'll go with that. Now, one thing I want to share that we have about 15 minutes. So Bianca, if we cannot finish coaching you, I'm happy to do it outside of this call. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, beautiful. All right.
Thank you very much, Dan.
My pleasure. Can you please state now, everybody, remember we talked about an agreement of listening. Now, I'd like for you to give a lot of attention and listening to what she's saying and hearing how what she's saying relates to you. Okay, Bianca, go ahead. Can you please state what's the quote unquote problem?
So the problem right now is that I'm constantly feeling the pressure of keeping me updated and always like checking the latest email, always checking the latest updates like on LinkedIn or something, or that I don't want to miss anything. And then also on the other side, trying to build my path without limiting the disasters as much as possible. And trying to set to tackle what other people want in the best way, even if, for example, it's not what I really like to do or what I feel like I'm most passionate about.
Okay, beautiful. And is it okay for me to coach you right now? And for Justin to coach you? Okay, good. So we have your permission, right?
Yes, sure.
Okay, thank you. I have a question for you. Can you tell me how you think about the concept of saying no?
So say no. I usually say no when I think that I cannot do it, but then I feel guilty and I take some time to do it.
Okay. Can you guys relate to that? You want to say no, but you want to say no to something, but then you feel guilty for saying no. Okay. Yeah, resonate? Good. So you tell me that you have anxiety and because you have so much going on, you cannot sleep, right? You wake up in the middle of the night. Okay. If I had to ask you a question of how many things right now you have on your plate, on your kind of list that you would like to say no to, can you tell me?
So that I would like to say no to,
Yes.
I think is two
Two.
things.
Okay. And how many things you actually want to say yes to?
One thing.
Okay, so you have three things on your list. Okay. Now, can I ask you a question? What prevents you from saying no to those two things?
Because I think that for the time being is the best way to develop in a part of my business.
Okay. So you believe that it's the best way for you to develop a part of your business by saying yes, even though you want to say no to.
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell me what one of those things is? Can you share?
Like one of those things is writing a European research grant that should finish quite soon. And is it because
I want to be very clear. So to write a European research grant.
to help writing a European research grant?
Okay. And why is it important for you to write it?
It's important because in that way I give support to the people which will be my founders.
Okay. And what part of you wants to say no to this?
To the writing part,
Yes.
because I don't like it, and it's not my.
You don't like writing.
Is not my focus right now. So basically, we are doing a startup on different things related to that, but different. This European grant is just to help them with their thing, and having financing for this research will also help advance our research in some way.
Beautiful. So can you tell me what the benefits are for actually writing it?
Hopefully have some funding.
To get some funding. Okay. And that funding will help you in your business?
No.
No.
Not directly.
Not directly. Okay, good. Okay. Tell me something that will benefit you directly.
Concentrate on my business and funding my business, getting fundings for my business directly.
Okay, so if you were to write this grant, there's an opportunity for you to get funding for your business. Is this right?
Yes, indirectly.
Indirectly. Now, why would that benefit you? Funding for your business.
Because it's a deep tech startup and needs a lot of fundings for research, and the more we have grants, the better it is.
Okay. So what you're suggesting to me is that if you were to write this grant, you will get funding indirectly that will help your business. Is that true? Okay. But you don't really want to write it. Now, if I were to help you resolve this, right, I probably lead you into the conversation of who in your life can help you write this right now.
Maybe my former boss, I think so.
Yeah. Okay. So what would be like for you to actually ask?
I've asked and he will revise that, but he can write it because to write it, it's also to be paid. and the fundings that we have in order to write these grants are not cannot be distributed to other partners, additional partners.
Okay, so I want everybody to understand there's a complexity in this conversation where there are certain elements related to this decision-making process of productivity where she wants to write it. She has a goal of writing it because she can get funded indirectly, but at the same time, there's a constraint, right? So if I were to spend more time coaching with you, we will understand how to remove some of these constraints. Does it make sense? Now, let me ask you, what's helpful so far in our conversation for you?
Oh, sorry?
What is helpful from what we talked about so far?
The understanding that I should delegate, maybe.
Understanding you should delegate, maybe. Like finding someone else to help you. Is there anything else that you're finding that's useful in this conversation?
That's limiting the things on my plate that I don't want to do.
Say that again?
Limiting things that I don't want to do on my plate. So balancing my plate.
So then when you eliminate things that you don't want to do, what happens with the stuff that you want to do?
That I fully focus and I'm being productive and feel also more relaxed and that I'm progressing faster.
Now, is it useful so far?
Yes.
Okay. I'm curious to know what other people saw in the last, few minutes that we've been talking with Bianca.
Yanush, may I ask one question?
Please.
One curiosity I have, Bianca, is if you were not tied to the current things that you are doing, what would be the ideal thing that you could do?
So the ideal things that I could do would be to actually ask do partnerships for asking for other ways, other grants that I think I personally think are better, more profitable for my business and less for than the indirect ones.
That's great. So what you're pointing to is the possibility that there's also what's called sunk cost thinking. And so sometimes we start onto a pathway that makes sense, at the time, but then sometimes other opportunities appear and now our time and attention is tied up in something that we thought made sense. So that's called sunk cost thinking, and sometimes that can be a barrier towards productivity where it feels like we should follow through, and that sometimes obscures other options and sucks bandwidth and energy that we could be using to navigate towards more nuanced or current opportunities that we see from the current perspective. Okay, so timing wise, that's great. So
beautiful. Thank you, Justin.
Back to the audience. What else are you all seeing or questions?
Stein?
And I actually actually very curious to how to deal with like that sunk cost thinking, because it is very much resonates with me. And I'm currently on some things that I know are the effect of that, but I have no idea how to really deal with that.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and I want to come back to that, and let's go ahead and see if there are other questions since we have about 5 minutes left. Would you raise your hand real quick if you can stay for an extra 5 minutes? Okay, great. There's enough people. We can hang out. Are you okay, Yanush? A little longer?
Yep.
Okay, great. So how to handle sunk cost thinking?
Hang on. You wanted to ask a few more questions before we go.
Yeah, right. So it's repeating his question, and then if anybody else has questions, let's put them on the table as well. or it could also be insights that you had for yourself listening to the coaching. Okay. Greta, go ahead. Yeah.
I think to me, like from the conversation, you tied all these to getting things done and the amount of things you can get done in a specific time period, like in a day that is like, okay, then I'm productive. And if I'm very effective and the whole thing with time, like many of us feel that. And I can't help but think of like, how do we get all, like most of us in this thing? And it goes back to school a lot, right? Like I think in school we're given so many tasks that you need to come back tomorrow having done all this, right? So just an insight that I got from all this is like, okay, how far back does this go? We have like all these tasks that we need to do, and if we do them, then we're good and productive. And if we don't, like, or we cannot say no to. Maybe tying back to what Bianca was saying. Yeah, just an insight that I was thinking.
That's great. Yeah, thank you. Excellent. And Stefan?
Yeah, thank you. What I picked up from the coaching with Bianca was kind of having a negative belief system, and doing things out of this belief that you owe it to someone. And I think, also for me personally, I think for a lot of people, often we do stuff, and we load up our task lists with things we think we need to do based on a belief that we owe it to someone, but we don't really do it for us. And then if we would really just focus on the things we do for us and let go of some beliefs that we owe people something we probably don't, we could get more done, like have also more joy in the things we're doing because we're doing it for us. This was something I picked up and resonated.
Great. How did that help you with your question earlier?
I'm not sure right now because I know this like intellectually, but then emotionally still I often got this feeling or this wish where I like to have more time, and probably it's still difficult to differentiate what are the things that I really want and need to do for myself, and what are things that I believe I need to do in terms to yeah.
So, Stefan, I want to drop a question for you to reflect on. You don't have to answer it right now. It might be useful for others too.
Sure.
But this occurred to me when you first asked it, which is, um, it's something like, what causes you to feel constantly behind or falling short? And so you can just think about that.
Sorry, could you repeat? My
Yeah.
phone just dropped the
So
noise.
what's causing you to feel constantly behind or falling short?
Mm-hmm.
And
So go ahead, Yanush.
yeah,
Yep.
and I just want to add to, and I want to add to that, Stefan, is like, what things I want to say no to, but I can't. What things I want to say no to, but somehow I can't. Thank you, Justin. I think Kemi.
Yeah, I just wanted to double click on what Stefan was saying. And it's reminded me of a question that has helped me, but I haven't sort of revisited as often, which is like, what is even mine to take or do? And I think for me, this is particularly, I get into this sense of overcommitting because I feel like I have a responsibility to use my privilege and as well to help, solve problems or contribute to solving problems that I think are not like morally righteous. And I think one thing that I've had to remind myself of, and even just recently I took something on, or I had to let go of something that I took on that I think is really important, but I had to recognize that it wasn't actually mine to do and to be a part of, even though the cause in and of itself is important. And so this conversation kind of reminded me of this, like, what is yours to take or what is yours to do. Even if it maybe objectively is a good thing to do, it might not be yours.
Cool. Thank you.
So,
Just
yeah, go ahead, Justin.
I have a question, Cami, again, not to answer right now, but just to ponder. How does the notion of that you mentioned privilege, the privilege to help, how does that help you and how does that hinder you when it comes to your
Mm-hmm.
and then Yanush, did you have something else?
I can add later. It's okay.
So I want to go back to Stein, and I probably butchered your name. We tried to say it like your mom does, but so what did you notice about your own question while you were listening to these other questions, Stein? What's come up for you?
The biggest thing that come up is, I mean, the acceptance that it's just the case that it is sunk cost, right? That's so important, and that it's mainly the fear of disappointing people around it. So a lot of acceptance that came mainly was like the learning I got, like, hey, all these things kind of resonate towards the same thing for me. Yeah, and that is that fear of then disappointing the people around me that probably then creates that fear, and that I also want to understand, like, okay, where did that then come from, right? And
yeah. So what I want to point out for everybody is the process that Stein just went through, which is there's no right answers here, right? So sunk cost thinking is a concept, but the right answer is exactly what Stein's wisdom kicked up for him once he saw the blind spot, once he realized and was able to name and be aware of the dynamic. Now he's got options for other choices. And there's no right choice here. The choice is what makes sense for you as the entrepreneur, looking at all of the variables in front of you. What's reality for you and what makes sense for your goals, for yourself, and for whatever sense of integrity you have in the situation.
And I want to add to what Justin is saying, with all of you, especially what Bianca was saying, it's like, what are the two most important things I need to be focusing on to move whatever I'm, like, my company, my business forward? Because I bet you when you concentrate on those two things, the distractions fall away. And one of the things I've learned through time is that I have to be a very good listener to really understand what's happening. And, Justin and I have been partnering this year, and we're doing a lot of experimenting. And one of the most important things for us to be productive is our trust with each other. It's seemingly unrelated. Like, how can it be like, he needs to send 20 emails or 30 emails? It has nothing to do with that. It's the fact that, so he's in Germany, I'm in the United States, we're having this webinar, and we just playing together. You can see in this like hour and a half, we just playing. We just trusting that he's going to say something that would support what I'm saying, and I'm saying it would support the group. He's saying would support the group, and we're supporting the entire group. Does this make sense? Now, if you can see the underneath this acceptance is like, am I trusting myself to say no to things? I think we're over time.
One last thing to part, okay? I want everybody to unmute. It's an invitation, okay? And on the count of 3, I want everybody to stick their hand out and yell no. Okay. 1, 2, 3. No!
No!